Today I want to talk all about my two newest patterns, Starbloom and Snowbloom. I'm Norah Gaughan, and my favorite thing to do is to design sweaters. I've decided to divide this video into 3 parts because my two new sweaters are built on hexagons. The first part of this video is going to go over a condensed version of my history with hexagons, or hexagons, G-A-U-G-H-A-N, if you like a good pun. So first the history, and then I'm going to really show you the structure about how they're put together. It's based on a triangle, and I'll show you how you knit it and how it goes on to, each piece goes on to the next piece, because that's not intuitively obvious if you're just looking at the pattern. And then we'll go into detail about the yarn and the needles and a few little tricks about what to look out for when you're knitting these two sweaters. I first started to think about hexagons, to design with hexagons, when I wrote my book Knitting Nature, which was based on shapes in nature, and hexagons are in a lot of things, like, you know, honeycombs and bubbles and a lot of other stuff that I can't think of this second. So this is a sweater that was in my book Knitting Nature, and the entire tank is built from hexagons or partial hexagons. So you'll see there's a hexagon in the middle. Here's one on the side that just has a split in it, actually has a piece missing. In the back there's a half a one. And something that I think is interesting about this one is that all of the hexagons were knit flat, because at that period I felt like nobody was knitting on double pointed needles. Nobody liked to. That it's kind of laughable now because everyone loves to knit on double pointed needles or use big circular needles to make something like this, but it has a seam in it, which you can't really see. One of these is a seam. And the other thing that's important is I started here picking up on the outside and working in, because I think that's so much easier than starting in the middle with a couple of little stitches and working out. Plus it's easy to join them that way. So another sweater from Knitting Nature is this one, and it's got kind of a different philosophy about how you get the hexagon in there. In this case, we knit most of the sweater with this zigzag edge, and then pick up around 2 edges and cast on the other edges of the hexagon and work in. They are worked in the round because all those little seams even then didn't seem like a good idea. And you work them onto each other as you go and around the back neck and down. So that has more to do with building the piece first and then putting the hexagons on it. After I wrote Knitting Nature, I went to work for Barocco and I became the design director there. And I couldn't stop thinking in hexagons. There are loads of sweaters that I designed that I don't have here with me. I happen to have these samples in the studio, so they seem like a good idea for doing the history, but there are many more if you go on the Barocco site to look. I thought in hexagons to make peplums, I thought in hexagons to make any kind of adornment. So here we have one where again the sweater is shaped first, and then you go in and pick up for the hexagon and work in. In this case, the hexagon is missing one of its wedges, and that forms the V-neck. This is another one done in that period when I was working with Barocco, except this one was done for Knitter's Magazine. So in this case, again, we built the sweater first, knit the sweater with the shape we need to fit the partial hexagon in, and then the pieces are picked up and work inward. Truth be told, it might have been sewn in, but I think that was only out of convenience. Really, it's much better to pick them up and work inward. And you can see that 2 of the 6 triangles are missing in this case, and the back is perfectly plain. But also notice how just one simple pattern in each triangle repeated over and over becomes something fancier, something that seems more ornate, and starts to look like a flower. I then wrote my book, The Twisted Stitch Sourcebook, Norah Gaughan's Twisted Stitch Sourcebook. And in that book, I have a whole chapter on hexagons. So the fancy bit on each triangle is different. I have 11 different ones or 12 different ones in the book. And this pattern is in that book. And in this case, the whole front is a hexagon. The back is an identical hexagon. And they have been knit onto kind of normal looking raglan sleeves and a little bit of extra here at the side to fill in. So actually the sleeve and these bits were knit first, and then the hexagon was knit onto them. I was really trying to keep it simple and allow you to use the same chart for every single bit of the hexagon, so I made the neck straight across, so it's kind of a boat neck. It doesn't have any shaping in it. And that will be important in a sweater or two as we go through the history here. My next book was Knit, Fold, Pleat, Repeat, and here I use the hexagon in a completely different way. In all the other pieces, the hexagon is flat, it has no three-dimensional quality. But if you set a hexagon against another hexagon, you'll get a really three-dimensional shape, and that's what's happening here. We have 3 hexagons attached to each other, making like a ball for the end of the sleeve. And then you pick up the sleeve and work towards the center. But a very different way of using the hexagon in this book. And now we're up to the sweaters that we're really talking about today. So in this case, you can see there are 3 triangles. Let's look at the back, because the back has like complete triangles. You can see there are 3 triangles here, and I think of that as half of a hexagon. You could just think of them as 3 triangles, but in my mind, they're half a hexagon. And you can see how it ties in with the whole hexagon. Like, what if we only use the top half of this? You can see that the thought process is consistent there. So here we also have triangles for the top of the sleeve, and I'm about to show you with a diagram like how this is really put together. So this sweater is a heavier weight version. It's got a few twisted stitches to give it a pattern going on here, a star. And then I did a second version, which I call Snowbloom, because this looks more like snowflakes. And this is pattern stitch that is very similar to what's in my Twisted Stitch Sourcebook, and it's the same construction that we just saw on the green sweater and the one I'm wearing in a different color, the Starbloom and Snowbloom. And I just wanted to point out that the stitches here, well, you can see the center of this and how it ties in to this band that goes across. And then this pattern stitch and these, all twisted stitches, tie in very much with what's on the mannequin here. I use the same center panel and this same little braid as I did in the sweater, which is in the Twisted Stitch Sourcebook. Starbloom and Snowbloom are both built with triangles. So you start with the triangle that becomes the top of one of the sleeves. Then we knit a second triangle, which is the top of the other sleeve. Then, to make the back, we're going to take one of these, and we want this edge to be there. Pick up along it and cast on, and then pick up along this edge. So the cast on edges of both are the ones that are facing out that way. Then with those that we've picked up, cast on and picked up, we knit the back. which is knit using exactly the same chart that we used for the tops of the sleeves. We knit 3 times for the back. Now, let me tape these together so we'll start to get a better idea. And I can flip my little model around. So, the way this is going to be worn, you've knit it this way because you had to, but it's going to be worn this way. This is the shoulder and the neckline of the back. These are the sleeves, so really when we wear them, they're going to like fold in half. Like that. Now we're ready to do the front. So back to here. In this case, we have to do 1/2 at a time because we're going to make a little scooped neck here, and it doesn't join until the end of the scooped neck. So let me find my little pieces. So first we pick up along this edge and a little bit of the shoulder, like that, and work the same way we did for the back while also shaping the front neck. So you knit this far on the right shoulder. This is right as worn. So if you were wearing it, this would be your right. That's the convention for naming these things. And then we're going to do the left front. So pick up a few stitches along the back neck here and down this part of the sleeve cap. And then again, knit outward while shaping the neck. So we have those 2 pieces. I'm going to tape them. So then we have the 2 fronts, and on one last wrong side row, we're going to go across here, cast on, and finish up. And then we will be able to complete the front. Let's turn it over. This is the way we're going to wear it. But now we have to pick up all along here, cast on a few inches for armhole, pick up along the back, cast on a few inches for the armhole, and now we can work round and round and round downwards towards the hem. So of course you would be working it like this. You'd be looking at it like this when you were picking it up. And then for the sleeves, it's the same idea. So you have an armhole here, which I can't really do in paper very easily, but you start at the beginning of the armhole, pick up around the sleeve, and back around to the beginning, and then you can work round and round and round to the bottom of the sleeve. So in essence, this is worked from the top down because you have completed the top of it doing the hexagons, and then you get to work top down for the rest to decide how long you're going to make your sleeves and your body, and then at the end you pick up around the neck and do the neckline. And in this case, well, in the Starbloom it's got a high neck, and in the Snowbloom it's got a low neck, but both of them have the same general structure. This is Starbloom, and I called it that because the pattern that we put in the yoke reminds me of a star, so that's pretty obvious. It's knit in Barocco Ultra Wool Chunky, which is knit on a size 10.5 needle. That makes it a Lopi gauge. It's 14 stitches to 4 inches. Notice that it's very pliable, drapable yarn at this gauge. I really found it a pleasure to work with. And it shows off all the twisted stitch. This is twisted stitch. And then below the yoke, there's another little twisted stitch pattern, a pretty easy one. And that shows really well in this yarn. I used some garter ridges to give definition. So after you pick up along the bottom of the yoke, start working downward, there's a garter ridge right there that really helps make that area look good. Like if it were just picked up, I don't think it would look as smooth and finished as it does with the garter ridge. So I also put the garter ridge on the sleeves. So you could have picked up like right into the cast on, but it makes a funny little divot. And I really like the idea of making something purposeful there. So it looks like we did this on purpose, the garter ridge, and then you go downward. Any other, oh, there are a few details to watch out for. Here, I have a chart. Everything is charted. It is not written out because it's much easier that way. I'm apologize to the people who can't use charts, but it would be very, very hard to write all of these out in all 9 sizes, so this is what I decided to do. There is a question I've gotten most often, not that often, but occasionally. The instructions say to purl 1, work the chart, and purl 1. And that's confused people because the chart starts with purl 1 and ends with purl 1. So yes, for the sleeve, you purl 1, purl another one, so purl 2, get to the end, and purl that one and purl the extra one. And that was done so that we can use the same chart over again as the one that is in the yoke. And in that case, you have an extra purl at the beginning and one at the end, but not in the 2 middle places. And so that's why it confused a few people. If you read too quickly and you think you know what's going on, you might get confused. But if you take it literally, purl 1, do the chart, purl 1, and the next row is knit 1, do the chart, knit 1, then you'll understand what's going on, and it's really not too hard. So other details, maybe the bind off, another garter ridge, and then just a row of rib and bind off in rib. Kept it really simple on this one. And then on the neck, it's bound off with a row of purl. And that seems to keep it upright. Be careful what yarn you use. If it's really drapey, this neck will just sort of collapse, which you might like the look of. I like this one when it's kind of standing up like it does here, and this yarn does it quite well. So now on to Snowbloom. Snowbloom, as you can tell, is in a finer gauge and it's a little more intricate. The yarn I used for this one is Brooklyn Tweed Imbue Sport. It's a merino yarn and it's amazingly soft. I knew it was going to be nice, but when I started working with it, I was really blown away. I love this yarn. We're getting about 6 stitches to the inch on a size 5, and then I used a 3 for the details for the ribbing at the bottom, the cuffs, the neck. And this yarn just really shows off all this detail. The chart's much more complicated. Much more complicated. I shouldn't say that. That will scare people. It's more intricate. There's more going on, but these are all twisted stitches, which are worked without a cable needle. It's a very easy way to make a like 1/1 cable looking thing. So again, you start here. You just saw the whole structure, how it's made. There are a few differences between this one and the Starbloom, a few more complications. So after the yoke is all done, instead of picking up for the body and working downward, you work this band that's worked sideways. So you have to pick up all the way around, then cast on these stitches, and you keep attaching the band as you go. So this is a little more slow working. You work that all the way around. Then you pick up on the edge and work downward using these fancier, more Aran looking stitches, but on a smaller scale. I put some real details in the side seam. Can we see that? There's a twisted stitch and some rib to give detail. And then at the very bottom, there's a split. It splits and you're working the rib for the front and the rib for the back separately. I made a fancy kind of rib at the bottom where under the stockinette it's 2-2. Well, first of all, this little detail continues all the way down. Then under there it's 2-2. This braid goes all the way down. Under the bigger panel, it's twisted 1-1. So only the knit stitches are twisted. You knit into the back of every knit stitch and you're working back and forth. So it's on both sides. So every other time it's twisted. And then again across here with the 2-2 rib. And to keep the bottom really stretchy, I used an Icelandic bind off, which makes it look a bit like there's just a purl ridge across there, but it's much stretchier. And at the top, I have 2-2 rib until the very center of the neckline there where it changes to the 1-1, the half twisted one I just described, and then again bound off with an Icelandic bind off. On the cuff, 2-2, but to keep everything matching, well, I did the Icelandic bind off there as well. I hope you'll knit one of these two sweaters, the Starbloom or the Snowbloom, and have fun with the challenge, the fun of a new construction. See you next time.
Honeycomb, won't you be my baby? Well, the honeycomb be my own. Got a hank of hair and a piece of bone that made a walking, talking. Honeycomb, well, honeycomb, won't you be my baby? Well, the honeycomb be my own. What a darn good life when you got a wife like a honeycomb. Honeycomb.